Whenever you come on, you're always looking at the ceiling. Anyway, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. It's my fault we were late today. I was looking at something and not looking at the clock.
$5 fine.
That's fine. That's fine. It's you still owe on the fine department, you still owe a couple of $1 million. So we're fine. That will reduce against the couple of million you owe. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. The check is in the mail.
as always, as I would expect. Okay, so the Bank of Canada key interest rate is cut again another 0.25%, and it's the third consecutive monthly cut. All right, but inflation is still lower than the interest rate.
Well, I don't know if this is such a good idea, but the Bank of Canada says that it is. Yeah. Yep. So, like I said, I don't know. I don't know if the Bank of Canada. It's a good idea to drop it right now, although it's going to be some kind of relief for us. But will it reignite inflation? I don't know.
The problem right now is that those people who are looking at renewals in the next 6 months are probably thinking to themselves, especially if they were on a fixed rate deal, they're thinking to themselves, well, this is not good for me.
Yes, but it's going to help anyone new getting into the market, I suppose. Now, the real hitch here, and probably one of the things that stimulate this, because if you notice in the United States, I think their interest rates even higher than ours right now, I think, and they have the same problem with inflation. But Canada is on the cusp of a recession, if you read between the lines. Yeah. And to avoid that, perhaps that's part of the reason why they lowered it to 4.25%. So I'm not so sure it's a great idea, and I'm wondering how much pressure the feds have put on the Bank of Canada to lower the rate. Now, normally they are an independent body,
yeah,
but with Trudeau's tanking popularity, and I'm wondering if they just said, can you do anything to help this economy? Now, Canada's economy is said to be on the cusp of recession, and that's no good for anybody.
The interesting thing is to always look elsewhere, right? So UK interest rate went up to 5.25% and is currently at 5%. So you might be right.
Yeah, and so I don't know if our economy.
Everybody who's got a mortgage, particularly those that are renewing in next year, are kind of going, well, I want these to go down again. I want to get my 2.99% mortgage again, which of course they won't.
No, I just looked up U.S. interest rates. What is the current U.S. rate? And it is 5.2%, and that's the Fed interest rate. So to 5.5%. They have been working on coming to a conclusion that they should reduce their interest rates as well. But we've noticed that ours is lower than theirs. Is our economy responding better than theirs are? Is our inflation responding better than theirs?
I doubt that. I really do doubt that.
No, I really do doubt. Although in the G7 right now, Canada's not in really great shape. We have the highest housing and rate in the G7. We also have the lowest productivity level for an economy in the G7. We're not in good shape. Yeah. So something has to turn around. And if our economy and there are evidently there are a lot of companies moving out of Canada for greener pastures elsewhere, particularly to the States. we also are losing. Although we're having a lot of people come into the country, we're also losing a lot of our talent going south of the border, where there are greener pastures or other places that have greener pastures, but mostly to the States. So right now, our economy is really not in a really good position, and I think this basically, why does Canada reduce their interest rates to a point where it's better than most other places in the G7 is, or at least to our biggest neighbors down south, is probably to stimulate the economy. The economy is going south a bit. And the Bank of Canada spokesperson there has said that, the spending is down and consumption is down, but that now risks if you read between the lines again, it has slowed the economy down a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But this is a balancing act. The Bank of Canada has to use this balancing. It has to check the numbers, and if it sees that the economy is going to suffer from higher interest rates, it will lower them.
Yeah.
And this particular, I think this is a case, and I'm wondering if they're trying to stimulate the economy with lower interest rates will actually do the reverse and bring back inflation. So we're really on this knife edge. Are we going to go back into inflationary zone with the interest rates going down, or are we going into a recession if they don't come down anymore?
Yeah.
And either scenario is very bad.
Yeah, exactly. Either scenario is bad. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place here,
Quite right. It's just not. It's not where we want to be.
Yeah.
And but if it does give some relief to some people, that's good. But right now, our plunging. The biggest issue, of course, is the decline of the middle class. The standard of living has been arrested, and these are issues that will probably destroy the existing government in the upcoming election, which could probably lead us to the major earth shake of Canada that happened, was it yesterday or the day before? And that, of course, is Jagmeet Singh pulling out of the supply, the deal what he had with Trudeau. Now, when you think of the interest rates coming down and Jagmeet Singh pulling out of the deal with Trudeau, now the interest rates coming down may give Trudeau a bit of a breather in an economy where nobody has confidence, or very few do, to those others. Metaphysical Mike. Hi, Mike.
And he asked the question, how long will it take for prices price of housing to go up?
And that's the rub.
Yeah, that's also part of the rub. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
if the interest rates go down, then there'll be a flurry of housing.
But again,
that is in a place where you have a sparsity of supply, and that is in housing. Will it affect the price of housing? Hardly. It's like saying, will it affect the price of gold? You cannot, gold is always going to be a valuable commodity because of its rarity. That means houses are going to be a valuable commodity because of their rarity. And I think universally, we all think that housing is overpriced. If the average house in a place like Niagara Falls is $700,000.
I would actually say that, hey, I don't think that the house price in Niagara Falls is overpriced. I think that we had a flat market for more than 25 years in Niagara Falls, but I will agree that the rental housing market is overpriced, massively overpriced, and can't sustain it.
I think the housing prices are overpriced. I'll go against you there, because of the limited supply. And when you have a limited supply of something, it is highly priced. If the supply of the commodity, like housing, cannot match the demand that it has, if you have 1 million houses and you have 1.5 million people looking for one, they're going to get the best prices ever. In fact, as I said before, among the G7, our housing crisis is the worst.
Yeah,
and our housing prices are the worst in a world where housing prices are going up everywhere. And I think, and I'm not so sure that it's altogether due to the interest rates, because of course, if we have all kinds of new people coming into the country, and many of them it seems to have money coming with them, they're going to buy houses and as an investment. That's another issue here. That houses and real estate are thought to be a good investment, so people buy them and sit on them or rent them. The supply goes down, and Mike Cushman says housing is way overpriced, and that is our country's problem. Until we start addressing overpriced real estate, our young are doomed. Well, our young are going to be dooming the federal government, basically, if you because they have been left out. They have been left out of a housing market where cars and washing machines and everything else are going up in a gradual as normal will go up in a gradual kind of graph sliding up forward. Housing went way up in comparison to that.
Yeah, well, housing's an awkward thing and never really follows the same trend as everything else anyway, right? Because in most parts of the world, there's been a gradual increase in the cost of housing. But as I said, we had this period for 25 years where in Niagara, the cost of housing never rose. Now, okay, Niagara's got special problems, we know that. But with the cost of housing at a complete standstill, it didn't help anybody at all. And it might have helped the person getting into that market for the first time up until 2015. But after that, one could argue that had the prices gone up, the prices that where they are now would have been where they would been after 25 years of gradual going up.
No, I've seen the graphs. The graphs in housing and consumers are all going up like this, and then housing goes along with it, and then there's this huge spike. Up farther away from all other goods, cars, everything else. They all go like this. And there are all these different lines of what goes up, and they kind of go in a gradual thing. And then in Canada and probably other places in the world, the housing part of it, which was following that line, shoots way up, way up.
Yeah. Well, the Niagara price was stagnant for many, many years. Anyway, moving on to that, what you were talking about, the NDP Liberal deal is dead, right? So basically, Jagmeet Singh has walked out on that deal. But does it mean that an election's coming? Not necessarily.
No. And is it really that much of a deal? Like I heard it compared to somebody that broke up with somebody but still dating him. I'm divorcing you, but I'm still dating you. Are they still kissing behind the bleachers if they broke up but still hit? Jagmeet Singh's in his statement, it's very clear that it is that he's unhappy with the Liberals, but he warns about the Conservatives. So I think this is a paper tiger. He's not going to cause the government to fall. it's in his least of his interest. He can now bluster and bang his chest and say, we're now different from the Liberals. We're separate. We're out there working for the working people of Canada, and the Liberals aren't. But in the meantime, I'm not going to let the Liberals fall. I'm going to do a little back deal here and there with them instead of being out in the open. And Jagmeet Singh, let's face it, Jagmeet Singh needed to separate himself from the Liberals because the consequence of that deal that they made may have served the purposes of the NDP and the Liberals by keeping the Conservatives away from power. But now the consequences of that are coming to bear. The NDP are not even considered to be a separate party. They are ill-considered among the voters now. Normally, they would have been an alternative in most places to the Liberals or the Conservatives, but now they're just kind of lumped in with them. Jagmeet Singh has to re-identify his party. He has to say that we are different and we are a better alternative to the Liberals. And he hasn't been able to make that case very well even now.
And other than in a few places like Hamilton, realistically, the NDP are not standing out as anything. There's not any reason to vote for NDP. You know, the choice seems to be that between Liberal or Conservative, and right at the moment, the Conservatives are eating into that Liberal lead.
And the rhetoric by which Jagmeet Singh has been using, he has started to talk about the working people and all that, whereas quite often the NDP go to the fringe, to the fringe but very vocal groups like the LGBTQ type of issues and make a really big deal about that. When the working class or the working people of Canada are suffering from inflation and wages and safety and all that other stuff in their jobs, and they do not, and the average person does not align with fringe groups like the LGBTQ and stuff like that. So it's no interest to them. Mostly, what is they're really interested in them is what they're putting on the plate, what they're putting on the table, how are they getting to work and back if they got a good job, and they see that their standard of living is being reduced. Young people can't have houses yet. So those are the issues that he's going to have to face. And everyone knows that, or at least suspects that, as he says, he's not going out with the Liberals anymore, but still kissing them behind the bleachers. So I'm not going out. I'm divorced. I'm divorced from the Liberals, but we're still dating.
Yeah. You know, there's that alliance is one that's, you know, was doomed to failure from the start, arguably. But then again, how close is that relationship between the Liberals and the NDP anyway? Because many would say, particularly those in the Conservatives, that they fulfill the same space in the, you know, to the left of centre of Canadian politics.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I don't think so. I think if the NDP gets their act back together, there will be a real alternative for a governing party. They have been in different provinces. The extremely failed government of Bob Rae, NDP, in the early 90s is still a thorn in the side of the NDP in Ontario. That legacy, even though it was all that time ago, has not gone away at all. People were very, very upset with the Rae government and the NDP back in the early 90s. As a matter of fact, Rae eventually jumped ship and went over to the Liberals and federally. So we can find that the NDP has to build up its reputation somehow, and it can't do that if it's hitched its wagon to the Liberals. Now they claim, and it's probably so, that they've had a certain amount of things forced the government into doing, like the dental plan and a few other things. There's a whole list of things the NDP has said that they have pushed the government into doing because they had a deal with them. If you want us to support you, we're gonna have this, and this. But to their chagrin, they haven't been able to get that information out to people. So people really don't know the extent to which the NDP guided the government into policies that benefit Canadians right now, and it could have been better. And the Liberals know that it would have been better for the NDP if they went faster on it, but they dragged their feet on it so that the NDP couldn't get too much credit for it.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Mike is saying that one of the challenges that he sees is that the Liberals and Conservatives have shared the destruction of this country together, and it's one of the reasons why he won't vote for either of them. Fair comment.
Yes, and Jagmeet Singh, of course, while he roundly criticized Trudeau caving into powerful interests at the expense of workers, he'll always that's kind of rhetoric he used. He also, his biggest warning was against the Conservatives, who he says will reduce services. They'll cut services. They'll cut. Well, the country is an extraordinary amount of debt. Cuts are going to happen, and I don't care what government gets in the next time. They're either going to sort of withhold or at least not improve services because they can't afford it.
Yep.
And so services are going to be cut one way or another, some way, somehow, with the next government that's coming in, because our country is hopelessly in debt. And we found that we were in big trouble when the COVID crisis hit, because we were already in debt. And the COVID crisis, if we hadn't been, the COVID crisis wouldn't have pushed us into extreme debt.
Yeah.
And when you have a country whose productivity level is declining, the immigration policy is not being well considered, then and we find that the government has not really thought out a lot of its things. And where does the NDP then now say the alternative is? They will take a shellacking if they say, oh, we got to reduce immigration numbers. They'll take a shellacking if they say we're going to have to reduce this or that service because we don't have enough money.
Well, because the NDP's supposedly opposed to that.
Yes, but
you look at each of those services. It doesn't matter what you want to say. And I'm just picking a couple off the top of my head. So if you cuts to healthcare, cuts to education, cuts to benefits, etc., are all things that the NDP campaign upon. So of course they can't support any of those.
Then the only way to support them or to maintain them is to raise taxes. That's the only way. Now, the Liberal government had found themselves in a really bad shape, so they needed another source of revenue, and that's where the capital gains taxes come in, from 50% to 66%. And that, people who have cottages or other holdings and that's a blow to them. Sure it is. But it's also a blow to doctors and other people who don't have pension plans and use their investments in a way that would secure them some money going forward. And if you cut off capital gains tax, you do something, you reduce the ability or the incentive for investment in the country, because the capital gains will hit you. And right now, investment in Canadian companies is not very good. Even the companies that exist here are not reinvesting in their own companies.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big problem in Canada and has been for quite some time. And like,
What
just
did Mr. Biker say?
Mr. Biker was saying that mega corporations a la BlackRock would prefer to house clients for a profit rather than compete with them outright in a free market. We've been manipulated in the trap of unending greed.
That's true. That's a big factor in our housing prices right now. And I think, I think it was like 2 years ago that 1 out of every 7 houses in the United States or real estate developments were now being privately owned by outfits like BlackRock, who plan to, and we know this in Hamilton too, when people were buying these old houses and splitting them into 2 units, and they were so the house did not go to a family. Now it went to an investment company, a real estate investment company, that then took the houses, now inflated the price so the family can't buy it, and then split them into 2 or 3 different apartment dwellings. So they've made money hand over fist. Now they control that home that used to be a family home, and now it's forced into a rental home, which also drove up prices for the average person. And that, of course, is happening in the States as well. Like you say, 1 out of 7 property. It was a chilling number. And of course, that obviously that thing is going to happen here in Canada too. We don't get those stats up here, but it was a big issue for a long time about how many houses were being bought by real estate investment companies and then turned into rental units. So taking them right off the market for the average family.
Yeah, because of corporate ownership. I don't think corporations should be allowed to. It's one thing corporation, let's say, like that estate, that townhouse estate across the road from yourself. It's one thing a corporation owning an entire estate like that because they built it there and then renting all the homes in an estate like that. But it's quite a different thing them going out and buying individual homes like mine.
Yes. And so say that you put up your house for sale, a corporation comes along. So you've moved. So they come in and then they take your house and make it into three different dwellings.
Yeah.
And then they could say to the city council, now look, now we can have 3 families instead of 1 sitting in here. That's a good thing. That's that'll take care of the housing problem. Meanwhile, it takes your house right off the market for anyone who wanted to be a family of having a dwelling.
And let's face it, there's a difference between these mega corporations buying a house and me buying a house and utilizing a corporation for A, tax purposes, B, insurance purposes and the like, right? Because my minor corporation is a different thing. I'm still essentially the 100% owner of that if I'm an investor.
Yeah. Now, how all this will factor into the fortunes of the NDP and the Liberals, I'm not so sure. The reduced interest rate will definitely be a slight sigh of relief for the Liberals because, of course, economy and inflation are a big part of the voter anger. So if the lower interest rate now starts to do a little bit of a relief for the average Canadians by next year, then the Liberals and the NDP may bounce back a little bit.
Yeah.
However, the idea that there's going to be an election, a non-confidence election called,
I don't think that doesn't suit anybody. That's not a good outcome.
It suits the Conservatives. And you know they're going to
But
put a
again,
non-confidence vote on the table. They're going to put something out there,
it,
a non-confidence vote.
it suits the Conservatives if the timing is right for the Conservatives.
The timing is
Right?
right for them now. They're 20 points ahead in the polls.
I grant that, but again, there's a whole question about um, when the time is right for any party to go to the polls.
Well, I think the voters are itching for an election. The NDP Liberal government that was established during COVID, and I still can't forgive Trudeau for this. He said that he would never have an election during COVID, but during COVID, his numbers went up temporarily because people approved of his handling, at least in the early part of COVID, of the crisis. He saw that and he says his numbers are going up. He got a chance to get a majority government. So he ran an election and nothing changed. It was a big waste of money. But in the meantime, and he picked the time too when the Conservatives were still changing leaders.
Yeah.
So now so it was an astute political move, but it was an unethical move because he said that we're not going to do this during COVID. And what do? You get a lot of people lined up in small places and where the disease could be transmitted more likely. And so I think it was a selfish move on his part, but an astute political move. But it didn't work. Pretty much everything stayed the same, and that forced him into a deal with the NDP. And the NDP were terrified of the beginning rise of popularity of the Conservatives, and so they joined forces with the Liberals and guaranteed them safety from a non-confidence vote. All of that has gone away, except on the surface it is. But if you read between the lines, Jagmeet Singh won't do anything different. He will support the government, evidently. And I think the Conservatives will push for a non-confidence vote of some kind. They'll throw a kind of a nothing burger out on the floor to see what happens. And Jagmeet Singh. And one other thing, the Bloc Québécois may not like the timing. And if they don't like the timing, they will support the Liberal government. If the NDP withdraws from it. Yeah.
Well, that is true as well. Absolutely, that is true. And that's why I say, it's not, despite what Polyev might think about that and the deal, it doesn't mean we're going to be having an election tomorrow. And we'll be fine about that, right? Polyev is going to have to pick his issue and pick his timing, right? In terms of if he wants to go for an election, that's going to be something that he's going to have to consider in all seriousness.
Yeah, I think, but I think a lot of politics is opportunism, and I just talked about Trudeau calling an early election during COVID because he thought he was going to get a possibility of getting. So that's opportunism right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Right now, the Conservatives are so far ahead of the Liberals and the NDP. If any opportunity to call election as fast as possible at these particular times with these particular numbers, Polyev would take advantage of it. I'm very sure of that.
Okay, so let's put another one on the table, Dave. You suggested a while ago that Trudeau's 9/11 would be 9/11. That's still potentially on the table.
Oh yes, very much so.
And as is my option that he won't give up.
Well, we shadow the United States in very many ways because Biden wasn't going to give up either, and everybody came to his support. Oh, he's fine, including Kamala Harris. Oh, his brain is just fine, and then but what made the difference because they thought, well, he beat Donald Trump last time. It doesn't matter if he isn't capable of thinking properly. The rest of us can do all the work and just have him as a showpiece. And so they just completely lied about Biden's ability to lead the country.
They were deluding themselves. And many in the Dems were basically saying you have to change course.
Yes, and I think that's what's going to happen to the Liberals too. Right now, Trudeau says, "I can do it, I can do it, I can do it," and all the sycophants around him are saying, "You can do it, you can do it, you can do it." But there's murmuring in the background. They're saying, "Look, pal, you got to get out of here because we need to establish a new leader. Right now, you're a big part of the anchor." It's right now, a lot of them are saying, "Well, it looks like we're going to lose the next election, but how badly are we going to lose it? And if we dump Trudeau, maybe we can mitigate that a bit."
Yep, absolutely, and that's what's going through a lot of thinking, a lot of their thinking, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And the 9/11 is 6 days away, so I still got 6 days to make my prediction.
Yeah, well, and hey, even if it happened on the 20th of September, I would still credit you with that one. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna kind of say that isn't true. I do expect, though, that however the election comes, I expect that Trudeau will still be the Liberal leader.
Unfortunately, I think this is going to be a problem for most of those people who have ambitious political aspirations.
Yeah.
If the Liberal government is crushed completely, as it has been before, as the Conservatives have as well, it takes a long time to build that back up. And if you are an ambitious politician in the Liberal government or any government, and you see that it may get totally wiped off the map or like so minimalized, like the Liberal government in Ontario right now is actually a party that nobody really even takes seriously right now because it got destroyed so badly in the last election. If that happens to the federal Liberals, all those aspiring ambitions of the talent that is in the Liberal caucus at the moment will find their ambitions thwarted, not for a couple of years, but for many, many years, if the wipeout is huge. And part of that wipeout is the unpopularity of the leader.
Yeah.
And it won't do the party any good to have an extra factor in there. The people don't like what the Liberals have done, and they really, really don't like Pierre Trudeau. It's the opposite of when he came in. He was the darling. He was the wonder boy. When he came in, everybody loved him. Now everybody hates him. So it's voter fatigue, basically. He's got to go, just like Mulroney had to go. Look what happened when Mulroney went.
You said Pierre Trudeau. You meant Justin.
Justin, yeah, I keep doing that. That's a mistake I always make.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. That's a good summary of where we are. Okay, but let's move on to something local. Doctors here in Niagara are basically saying that training in the new patient information system is something they're required to do, but they're not being paid for their time to do this training.
Yeah, you might want to say, "Wow, you're making lots of money anyway." You have to So what happens? The Niagara Health System the Ontario Health System is asking them to devote their own time to learn the new systems, to train on the new systems. Now, anytime at work, when I had a good union, if I had to train on a system, I was paid for that.
Yeah, and so you should be.
Yes.
So you should be. I'm absolutely in favor of people being paid to train on it. People, the best people will do additional training on their own behalf and will not, will do it out of paid time anyway. But generally speaking, people should be paid while they're doing training.
Yeah, people think the doctors make huge amounts of money,
Irrespective.
and they should be able to devote their own private time to this. I am with doctors on this. They are asked to train on a system, and they should be compensated for that. That is their time.
Yeah.
Just like any other worker, they should be, and they already know the system that's in place now, so they have to learn a new one, and they should be compensated. But the government seems to think that you don't have to be compensated. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I think when particularly, and I mentioned the capital gains tax being raises from 50 to 66%. Evidently, one of the big complainers of that move were doctors who take their profits. They don't have pension plans and things like that. So what they do is they make investments, and they make investments to so that they can retire with some sort of income a little later on in life.
Yeah.
And you're taking away a lot of their ability to do that by raising the capital gains. And now you're saying, well, not only that, but we're going to ask you to use your time, unpaid time, to learn our system.
Yeah.
And if it's a government system, they're going to take a long time to learn it, because there's probably all kinds of weirdnesses in it only the government could find.
Yep. All right. And generally speaking, I'm in favor of that. When people are in jobs like this, they should get, paid for training.
Well, you can see here too, I don't think it would even have been an issue if the economy was in good shape. But the government's so much in debt. We saw this a day or two ago when they were after the Boys and Girls Club to reduce their budget by 1%. Good morning, Karen Fraser. Happy birthday. You're looking pretty good for someone that's 49 years old. Good. See my diplomacy there.
I thought she was 48.
Oh, 48. Oh, sorry if I'd added on a year there, Karen. Looking great for 48. Really did.
Yeah. All right. So what we say, okay, so yeah, and essentially the doctors, and I know you could be cynical and say, hey, they earn enough money, but doesn't matter. I think they should be paid.
No, right now we can't attract enough doctors to this place, partly because they're not compensated well enough. They can find better compensation in other places. What you do want to do is make sure your doctors and medical people are well compensated. Now, there was a time when doctors had abused the system by loading up their clinics with more people than they could see in a 12-hour period, and people would sit there for 3 hours waiting to see a doctor, and go in and see him for 5 minutes, and the system would be charged.
Yeah,
that's no longer the case.
Well, okay, Peter Baker makes a statement that they can use some of that sweet farmer money that they've been feeding on to cover their time.
Farmer bark. I don't know how much the average GP, how much kickback the average GP does.
I didn't. Okay, so was this talking about general practitioners, or is this talking about hospital doctors?
I think it has to deal with everyone, because everyone has to be on the system.
Okay, fair question. Fair, because the article doesn't make that clear. At least I didn't gather it from the article. Yeah,
I think just about every doctor is going to have to know it.
Well, you see, some of it says, like, for example, Coley said physicians are expected to schedule their training time that will not impact patient care. Yeah, okay.
That's pretty clear. That's pretty clear. It's the average doctor.
That says it's the average doctor, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, as I say, the article doesn't actually make that 100% clear.
Oh, I got an idea. Well, if they're going to pay, maybe I could sneak in there and get paid for the training, not knowing anything I'll do, but just clock in a few hours before anybody gets wise, get my money, and they'll say, "I'm sorry." They'll say to me, "I'm sorry, Dr. Giblett, you don't seem to know what you're doing here." I'll have to use a false name, you know.
And okay, so Peter Biker suggests that that the average doctor is just a prescription writer, and yeah, I understand some of what you're saying there.
Yeah, and that pharmacy thing, like I know, I know of some doctors who get like free samples of drugs from the drug pushers, the pharmacy, and then they will then give it to patients they know that don't have plans. So that has happened. I know. I think my own doctor has done that.
Okay, so Karen wants to link to that article. Let me deal with that and put it up there, because that's fine. We can add that on. Although given well, actually, the one advantage you've got, because you're on YouTube, you're not limited on that, you know, so you maybe get it from YouTube, right?
Well, yes, and if you can't afford to go see a doctor, you can figure out how to fix yourself on YouTube. Anyway, they got everything else there. You can find out how to fix your car. Maybe you can figure out how to give yourself an epidemic or whatever.
Oh, due respect to the MDs who've indeed saved my own life. So, yeah, Peter might be cynical, but he's not that cynical. Okay, so let's move.
He'd have a lot different opinion if he died.
True. Let's move on. So staff in Welland are making the proposal to cut the size of the council in the 2026 election by half. In other words, there's 6 wards in Welland, and that what they're basically saying is let's have one councillor per ward.
Yes. So the size of government comes here into play. That they want to reduce, and of course they got a ward system of 6 wards, and they have two representatives in each ward. This is probably one of the problems with the ward system that I can see. So you're going to reduce your representation to 12 because you've got wards. But if you had an at-large system, you could reduce your representation from 12 down to 8, maybe. Now, this whole thing is a proposal to save money. They say that they're overgoverned, and the councillors are making more money than any other councillor in the region, $28,000 about. So they figure if they cut out 4 more councillors, they could save about $250,000.
Yeah.
So what they want to do is go from 12 councillors and a mayor to 6 councillors and a mayor, which is 7. 7.
The only thing about that, the thing I see about that is one of the big problems we have in Niagara Falls with only having 8 councillors is that there is not a committee. A committee on anything consists of 3 councillors and 3 councillors only. In Welland, that would mean a committee could only be 2 councillors, because if it was any more than that, it would have to be a committee at large. Because you can't have 4 councillors in a committee, in because of the way that the city rules work. In Niagara Falls, you can't have a committee of 4 councillors. It would have to be a committee of the council at large.
Yes. Well,
that would be the problem that Welland would face. I would say
Yeah,
they
but there will be growing pains, and who says that the council is going to vote for it? I think the council has to approve that, doesn't it? And it's like
yeah,
shooting
oh yeah,
themselves in the foot.
yeah, the council has to approve it.
Oh, anyways, look, I got to go because I have duties here in my condo. I'm on the board here, and we have a contractor coming at 8. So I got to scram right now, and
Okay.
I will say my thing. Without further ado, I bid you adieu, and pray for peace.
And
And let's hope Netanyahu gets a lightning bolt from God and puts a heart inside his chest. All right.
we'll pick up on the other subjects tomorrow. So thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.